Hey guys, this is Danny and this is Art Director Giraffe. Today we're going to be talking about the principle of design, emphasis. This is one of those principles that is so important in what we do when it comes to artists. This is what I'm going to be using as a definition today. It is the special importance, value, or prominence given to something. My goal is to teach you the basic idea of what emphasis means in art. And then, like I've done before, we're going to segue into 3 practical ways we can use emphasis in our lives to be able to accomplish more and get more art done. Here we go. Emphasis is a powerful force. When we're speaking about the principles of design, it single-handedly can be one of the most powerful tools you're going to be using when it comes to composition. We can create emphasis by using color, space, value, shape, or texture. And even though this is not like a comprehensive list of all the ways that you can do this, it's just the ones that I'm most familiar with. Now, let's take a minute to create some examples that show emphasis. We have 2 characters, but who should be the most important? Let's use color and space, and we can create the idea right before your eyes. Let's define real quick the rule of thirds. When we divide a composition using a 3x3 grid, any of the intersecting points will bring more interest and emphasis to the subject that it contains. Here I'm using space or the rule of thirds to create a focal point, so it's more obvious who is the most important of these 2. I'm also going to be using color to show that here. Alright, so now we know which one of these 2 characters is more important. It's obviously her. She's definitely the main character now. Another example, and one of my favorite ways that a lot of Japanese stories use emphasis, so usually in manga or anime, is by changing a character's texture. And usually we have simplified characters that lack realism, but when needing shock value or some form of extreme change, we add texture to emphasize a difference. Here we got this one guy who's obviously more serious about the subject he's talking about, and the other character's just trying to understand, and we just add that texture to him in almost a comedic way to emphasize him. And the last one will be a little bit more designerly. Here we have a series of dots and we don't really know which one's the most important, but we're going to apply all of these ideas that I've talked about, so color, space, value, shape, and texture, and we're gonna give this one circle main character levels of power. As you can see, it stands out so much more now. It has all of these applied to it. When we create what's called a focal point in our composition, we're adding clarity to it, making it way more effective. Always keep in mind emphasis when making any piece of art, and it will make your art at least 75% better, if not much, much more. Now that we talked about emphasis from an educational standpoint, it's time to jump into the meaty substance of how this relates to your art career and your life. Focus. How do we gain focus? In this extremely distracted world, how do we get focus? I've got a few points and ideas that are going to help you be more focused in your art goals and get you doing some of the best work in your life. Today, I'm mostly going to be focusing on a book by Newport called Deep Work. The book really emphasizes the necessity of focused, intentional work. Many of the ideas in the book are a little dramatic and kind of intense, but there's so many good points in this book that I picked 3 points specifically that feel a little bit more down to earth that I think we can use in our own pursuit of getting more things done. The first point, and it's kind of the overarching point of the whole book, is the idea of deep work itself. It kind of stands on the idea of uninterrupted work. Just the idea of sitting down, being able to do work without distractions. So no Facebook, no internet, you shut down your emails, whatever could distract you, you remove it so that you can sit down and do uninterrupted work. There is a neuroscience benefit that directly relates to deep work here. Our brains, when we're learning a new skill, produce a protein called myelin. This protein attaches itself to our neurons as they fire. And what happens is the more you practice a skill, the more protein is built in those neurons. When we're doing deep work, focused work, our brain is able to specifically apply more of that myelin to that neuron, making it much faster in its process of learning the skill. Because when we're not distracted by a ton of things and we're learning something new at the same time, then the myelin can focus 100% on the skill that's in front of you. Now, one of the ideas that comes connected with this idea of deep work is also the idea of a lot of rest. So let's say deep work, usually for the normal person, will only be able to be achieved in about an hour to 2 hours spurts. But like even the most expert people that practice this are only able to do about 4 hours. The idea is doing focused work in short bursts of time, so then we can just rest afterwards and we can get more stuff done in shorter periods of time. Cal Newport points out that Teddy Roosevelt was a very busy student. He had a lot of stuff to do, and he had to do it pretty quick. Okay, so he had sometimes basically very short amounts of time for him to be able to study in a day. What he did is he would sit down and he would just go, and for that period of time, 30 minutes to an hour, he would intensely work and he would be 100% focused on the task that was in front of him. But because he was intensely focused, he'd be able to make a much more progress than somebody who was more distracted. And so he was able to get very good grades even though his life was very busy in college. I think this idea is very practical for us, as I've been trying it out myself, and it's been very good. Just sitting down 30 minutes to an hour, just setting a timer, setting a time specifically every day to do so is also very helpful, because then it takes away the whole idea of like, oh, I have to sit down and do it. It's like, oh, at this time every day I practice deep work for an hour, and that's just been really good for me. I've been trying it out at work and it's been helping me get through a lot of my goals every day. Let's go straight into point number 2. Embrace boredom by distancing yourself from social media. I think this was one of the most practical points in the book that affected me very specifically and directly. I've talked about it before, how I've had to deal with social media and how much it distracts me. But one of the points that he had was this: plan to use social media rather than planning to do focused work. It's a way to train your brain to not go to social media when you're bored. Social media itself is not the plague, it's the distraction. So what you're trying to get away from is just being distracted all the time by social media. So I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but you're just like strolling around and you're walking and you get super bored, and all of a sudden you find yourself looking at your phone, and you didn't even realize that you started looking at your phone until you were, and you're just like, what's going on? Am I just looking at my phone because I'm bored? And the idea is that we're training our minds so that boredom does not directly send us into social media or the internet, so we can then practice deep work more easily and as often as we want to. Another adjacent benefit to experience boredom is what Cal Newport calls productive meditation, which is the idea that when you're walking your dog, you're driving your car, when you're, waiting at a doctor's office, you're able to think on projects, stories, ideas that you have for your art, and just develop those ideas while you are bored. What you do is you take an idea and you mull it, and you just refocus every time that your brain might get distracted. So you just keep bringing it back to the idea that you're trying to develop. And I think that was like a really good idea for me. I was practicing it the other day at the doctor's office. I was trying to get ideas for this illustration for this video, and I found myself getting very close to it by just sitting there and just thinking about it. And I thought that was really cool. And the third thing here is notice your shallow work or your least important stuff. Sometimes in life we do things that are not as beneficial to our actual goals. And I understand that not every single one of us is going for a high voltage working machine here, but we should always be striving to be better at making the things that we love. I notice myself drawing the same thing again and again and again, and I kind of say I'm practicing, but in reality I'm just kind of staying in the comfort zone. I think sometimes it'd be better to just cut a little bit of that out so we can add a little bit more focused training, such as learning more anatomy, learning how to do better composition, learning more about the principles of design, and just a lot of other things that we could be doing, honestly. And that'll just make your progress so much faster, because it will be more intensely focused on a goal that you might have. Focus is such an important thing as a part of our day-to-day. Without it, on most days, I'm gonna be honest, I don't get anything done, even the things that I love to do the most. And I understand there is a balance between spending yourself out and doing the things that you love, but at the same time, if focus is going to help you do the things that you love better, then I think there's a lot of benefit there. If today you were able to get just 1% better from what I've said, I've definitely enjoyed sharing this with you. Hey, if you want to watch another of my principal design and life videos, check this out.